Hello and welcome to Brew Better Coffee. Today I'm going to take you through my method of making a Hario V60 pour over. So before we start, let's take a look at a few of the things you're going to need. The obvious, first and foremost, you're going to need a Hario V60 dripper. Now this comes in different materials. I have here the plastic and the ceramic. There are pros and cons to each, but I actually recommend the plastic. I find it is really quite durable, especially against dropping it, more so than glass and ceramic, and it also doesn't take as much heat from your brew. The other thing you're going to need, which is quite obvious, is paper filters. I highly recommend for any brewing method that includes filters, you use bleached filter papers. The reason is because non-bleached filter papers impart a very sort of woody, papery taste into your coffee, and that's really not something that you want. Also, Hario, along with other producers like Chemex, they use an oxygen bleaching process which does not create harmful pollutants, so you don't have to worry about that. Now we can start brewing, and the first thing we're going to be doing is weighing out our coffee. I'm going to use 22 grams of coffee, and for every gram of ground coffee, I'm going to use 17 grams of water. This is what's referred to as your brew ratio, and it's a very important aspect of brewing coffee. So I will zero out the scale here. The next thing I'm going to do is get my kettle started. Brewing temperature can be anywhere from 195 to 205. If you don't have a kettle that shows the temperature, that's okay. You can typically use water that's just off boil, let it sit for 30 seconds, and you should be good to go. I'm going to be using water that is at 208 degrees Fahrenheit. I recommend starting higher than you need to because you're going to lose heat to the materials, to the cone itself, and to the air. And the hotter you start, the better it's going to be for your temperature later on during extraction. My kettle has now gotten up to the proper temperature, and I've set the beans aside. We're going to grind those last, just so that we can preserve the freshness as long as possible. So you'll want to take the Hario V60 filter, and you're going to fold it along the dotted line. Once you've folded it, you can insert it in the top. I like to give it a little bit of a push down. It's going to pop back up, but that's okay. Take your kettle, and you want to give the entire brew system a rinse with the hot water. The whole reason for this is to do two things. The first is to rinse out any remaining papery sort of taste from the filter, even though you are using bleached. The second part of all of this is to preheat all of the components in your brewing system. This is going to ensure that when you're actually brewing your coffee, you are not leaching any heat from the slurry or the water and grounds mixture in the middle. Now with that preheated, we can take this, dump the rinse water. I'm going to grind my coffee. One more quality check that you can do for your brewing is you can zero out your scale here at this point, just before you add the coffee. The reason for this is so that when you add your coffee, you can be sure exactly how many grams of coffee you have added to the filter. There might be some that were trapped inside the grinder as you were grinding, and you might have lost a little bit of weight. We are at 22 grams, which is perfect. After you've given the V60 a little bit of a shake to level out the grounds, the next thing you want to do is use some sort of stirring device. You can use a spoon, a knife, even here I'm using a bare cheese spreader. So really it can be anything. In the middle of the grounds here, we want to create a a hole or a sort of divot. Some people call it a bird's nest. You just want to create a somewhat shallow hole in the center. Creating the bird nest in the middle is going to give you the highest chance of ensuring that all of the coffee grounds are evenly saturated and hopefully saturated at the same time. This is optimal for an even extraction and best flavor. We can now start the pouring phase, and we're going to do it in two distinct pours. The first is called the bloom, and this is a term that many people have heard of. During the bloom, we want to add 2 to 3 times the amount of water as you started with in ground coffee. So I started with 22 grams, so I'm going to be adding a total of around 60 grams. I like to get closer to the side of 3 times the amount. So I'm going to add 60 grams of water, and then I'm going to wait for 30 to 45 seconds. But also, during the bloom phase, I'm going to be adding some agitation. This is really important because you want to ensure that all of the grounds are evenly mixed and have the same level of saturation as quickly as possible. You want to zero your scale and start the timer as soon as the water hits the bed of coffee. So with 60 grams added, I'm going to be adding a little bit of agitation with my knife here. And I'm going to be doing so in a very uniform and repeatable way. Once we have reached our target time, 30 to 45 seconds, we can begin the second pour. You want to do the second part of the pouring phase in a very repeatable, circular fashion. You also want to do it very calmly and very gently. I like to go in circular motions that start inward and grow outward. Some people prefer to go just on the inside in circles, and while that may seem easier and more consistent, I personally just found that my method seems to produce better tasting coffee. One thing you may also notice here is that we are pouring in one large pour. Smaller batches of coffee are more prone to losing heat. So one of the ways that you can increase your heat retention is to build up a larger volume of water at the beginning and retain that volume all the way through to the end. So we're getting close to 374 grams. Now begins the drawdown phase. This phase is, as its name implies, a drawdown of the rest of the water. The one thing you want to do here, though, is add a little bit of a spin. The spin does a very good job of leveling out your coffee bed so that the drawdown happens very evenly across the coffee grounds. I typically wait 20 to 30 seconds after the drawdown phase is complete to remove the paper filter. Waiting the same amount of time for every brew allows you to maintain some consistency and also reduce the amount of water weight that goes into your compost. And that's pretty much it. So if you like this video, please subscribe. I hope that we can continue to learn something together. If you have any questions, please comment below and I can try to answer them as best I can. And if you have other ways of brewing your coffee, let me know in the comments. Have a great day.